Myth or miracle? What should I believe about learning styles theory? I readily adopted the concept of the learning styles theory, but I can't say exactly when. It offered me a miracle of bringing all of my students to the top of their class. The bell curve would become a straight line of A pluses. I was thrilled and never stopped to consider, what is the rationale behind the learning styles theory, and where is the psychological or neurological evidence to support this discovery? In this simple poster, we can see, hear, or feel what we are learning. And apparently, we all have a preference, or a combination of preferences, in which we like to receive our information. What are the implications of this? On the popular website called VARK, you can answer questions according to your preferences in a variety of learning situations. Using this data, VARK claims to deliver a prescription for how you will learn best. VARK further supports their claims by providing a series of remedies you can administer to improve your learning capabilities. If we follow VARK's claim, a learning style shifts from one of preference to effective modality adopted for learning process. I paraphrase Carolina Kieper-Tetzel of the Learning Scientist blog when I say, the learning style theory purports, if I like acquiring information in a certain way, I will learn it more readily and retain it longer. Kieper-Tetzel summarized a review by Ang and Carr, 2017, to highlight some of the problems with this theory. In particular, she mentions how it categorizes learners into visual versus verbal learners, with visual learners presumably benefiting more from visual aids, such as graphs or diagrams, and less from written text, and verbal learners benefiting more from written text, but less from visualizations. She disputes this using dual coding theory, first developed by Pavio in 1971, as cited in Wikipedia 2017. Dual coding occurs because visual and verbal information are processed differently and along distinct channels in the human mind, creating separate representations for information processed in each channel. Sternberg, 2003. This being true, a learner exposed to one type of stimuli can only enact one mental code. If I apply the learning styles theory, am I putting my students at a disadvantage if I only cater to their preference? Obvious benefits occur when more than one of these codes can be acted upon, stored and retrieved for subsequent use. Sternberg, 2003, as paraphrased from Wikipedia, 2017. Ang and Carr criticized the learning styles approach on grounds that it lacks a clear explanatory framework, and in Carr, 2017. Ironically, evidence for this assertion can be found on the VARK website. Under the menu item Research and Statistics, it states, VARK deals with only one dimension of the complex amalgam of preferences that make up a person's learning style. VARK 2017. Well, I'm confounded. If one's learning style is a complex amalgam of preferences, then how can I be certain I have accurately assessed my student's learning style? Furthermore, why should I trust a prescription for such an assessment? Ang and Carr 2017 would appear to echo my concern when they state, the recommendation to teach to learning styles does not result in improved learning. In many cases, teaching to a learning style will result in stymied development and poor achievement because the approach to teaching does not address weaknesses. By blindly applying a learning style assessment, I may be inadvertently ignoring other factors that are affecting my students' ability to grasp a concept. According to Kristen Jarrett, psychology writer, there is no evidence to support that we learn better when taught with our preferred modality or learning style. Jared, 2018. In his article, Another Nail in the Coffin for Learning Styles, Jared uses the research done by Polly Huisman and Valerie Dean O'Loughlin. O'Loughlin and Huisman asked hundreds of undergrads in an anatomy course to take the VARK survey, use VARK's recommendations for studying, and then compared surveys of how the students studied to their final exam scores. Jared, 2018. The results were less than persuasive. 67% actually failed to study in accordance with their learning style, while those who did failed to achieve a better grade in their anatomy class than those who didn't. Jared, 2018. More reliable was the evidence found in the study methods used by high-scoring students. Jared, 2018. Notes: there were specific study strategies that were associated with better grade performance, regardless of students' learning style. At this point, the clouds covering my thinking are beginning to clear. Perhaps the evidence can sever my allegiance to the learning styles theory in favor of a less miraculous but more practical approach for improving student learning. I found some answers in a web article entitled Improving Students' Learning with Effective Learning Techniques. This article contains extensive research on 10 learning techniques, provides a thorough review of each as measured against several variables, and assigns each a utility rating from poor to high. Rawson, March, Nathan, and Willingham, 2013. Of the 10 techniques studied, 2 held distinction for me, distributive practice and interleaving. Their research showed that distributive practice, learning over spaced intervals, is more effective than cramming. It also held up across the variables tested. Distributive learning works across students of different ages with a wide variety of materials on the majority of standard laboratory measures and over long delays. Dunlosky, Ralston, March, Nathan, and Willingham, 2013. Benedict Carey, in his book, How We Learn, referred to distributive learning as the spacing effect and stated, people learn at least as much and retain it much longer when they distribute or space their study time than when they concentrate it. Carey, 2014. He used the work of Ebbinghaus and Wozniak to support this idea. Ebbinghaus studied nonsense syllables over measured time periods in order to quantify both the learning period and its eventual decay. Wozniak, by comparison, sought to quantify training intervals required to master a skill. In 1987, he finalized his ideas in a software package called SuperMemo, which taught English according to Wozniak's calculations. 2014. Using this information, I recognize how all learners, regardless of their learning style preferences, benefit when given ample time to absorb and review materials. Interleaving is learning by practicing mixed but related material during study. Carey, 2014. This contrasts with block practice done solely by focusing on a particular practice repeatedly. Cornell and Bajork showed the effectiveness of interleaving over block style in their famous artist experiments. Participants were more accurate identifying an artist's work when trained with interleaving. These experiments were both auditory and visual in nature. Do we know how these participants viewed their learning styles? Carey provides no clue. His focus is on what is working rather than who it's working for. In the work of Dunlosky, Ralston, March, Nathan, and Willingham, 2013, only distributive practice received a high utility score, while interleaving was rated at moderate utility. They do recommend, however, that educators consider adopting these practices when teaching mathematics. On the positive side, interleaved practice has been shown to have relatively dramatic effects on students' learning and retention of mathematical skills, and teachers and students should consider adopting it in the appropriate context. Dunlosky, Ralston, March, Nathan, and Willingham, 2013. While believing in miracles is always fulfilling, I am beginning to realize that my reliance on learning styles theory is less than adequate for elevating student learning outcomes. Given the research I've uncovered, and that which I am still processing, I recognize the imperative to seek substantial evidence to support my best practices. Although I'll admit, I will continue to make observations about my students' strengths and areas of need, I won't assume that my students failed to grasp information because it wasn't delivered in their desired learning style. Instead, I will continue to provide lessons that utilize as many modalities as possible, apply new research-based learning strategies that have earned substantial results, and make a more concerted effort to unveil teaching myths rather than wear them. Thank you.